Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So Jeremy Corbyn has finally come out and said himself what other senior Labour MPs have been saying, that he wishes to depose Boris Johnson and become caretaker Prime Minister himself. So in this video I'll be discussing Corbyn's proposals and the objections raised by other political leaders in the Commons. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So, Jeremy Corbyn has written to a number of influential MPs across most parties who are opposed to a no-deal Brexit. His proposal is as follows. 1. That he issues a no-confidence motion in Boris Johnson's government as soon as he's sure it would succeed. This could be in as few as 3 weeks if agreement is reached between those opposing no deal. 2. That MPs support him as caretaker Prime Minister. And 3, that as leader of the new interim government, he would seek an extension, arrange a general election, and then campaign for another Brexit referendum with Remain as an option. Now, although Ian Blackford, leader of the SNP in Westminster, has said that he'd like to discuss this proposal as soon as possible, other party leaders have been more scathing. Though it's not certain that Blackford would support Corbyn for anything less than a promise to back another independence referendum. Perhaps this is why John McDonnell was talking about this issue just last week when he had no need to and it caused a right old fuss. Perhaps they have already been in discussions, or maybe it's just that Labour anticipate this and were already preparing their agreement. But Labour and the SNP do not command a majority in the House, nowhere near in fact. They'd need another 40 MPs on board. Frankly, Jeremy Corbyn as caretaker Prime Minister is not an option. I'll explain each reason why. So, first of all, Corbyn made a point of not working with other parties to oppose the Conservatives' Brexit path at any point. Even when the withdrawal agreement was being heavily defeated and the anti-no-deal Brexiteer parties were getting together, Corbyn refused to cooperate, once turning up to a meeting of anti-Brexit leaders, seeing Amuna there and walking out. He's childish and has no inclination towards bridge building. There's also a hypocrisy about his suggestion. He engaged in a non-stop tirade about how undemocratic it was for Boris Johnson to become Prime Minister with less than 100,000 people voting for him. Well, Corbyn is proposing that he becomes Prime Minister with just over 300 people voting for him. The second reason is that Corbyn can't get Conservative rebels to back him as Prime Minister. Corbyn is the bogeyman of the Conservatives, and Conservative rebels are still Conservatives. It doesn't matter what these Tory MPs might think of him personally. Corbyn has been painted by the Tory media as a revolutionary communist, an extremist, and it worked in part because Corbyn has never done anything to counter the view. For example, take McDonnell's stunt last week, just adding fuel to the fire. He said that if Johnson were defeated in a confidence motion, that Corbyn should go to the palace and demand that the Queen make him Prime Minister. Threatening coups is not how you dispel the notion that you are a revolutionary nutter. So these two factors make it quite impossible for Corbyn to get a majority of MPs to support him. In fact, any one of those two factors would be enough. The new leader of the Liberal Democrats, Jo Swinson, said that Corbyn could not command even a temporary majority in the House. She has herself ruled out working with Corbyn, something I said was foolish at the time, but she has reason to do so. Remember that she was a cabinet minister who enabled a lot of very unpopular and damaging Tory policies during coalition with David Cameron's government. Her party suffered very badly from that in 2015 and have only really started to make headway again due to their clear opposition to Brexit. They are also trying to woo MPs and voters who have been disaffected by the hostility to centrists in both Labour and the Conservatives. In other words, they're trying to attract people who are opposed to both Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. They aren't going to achieve that by agreeing to support Jeremy Corbyn. They would, however, support a compromise candidate, and they have even mooted the idea of it being a backbencher in either Labour or the Conservative Party. Yvette Cooper or Sir Oliver Letwin are names that have cropped up. Caroline Lucas of the Green Party has said that any new referendum should be before a general election. And so she's not in favour of Corbyn's proposal either. Plaid Cymru were of the same mind. Together these parties hold 5 precious seats for any anti-Johnson alliance. So why is Corbyn in favour of a general election before the public vote? I think it's because he wants Labour's position to be that they would seek in government to get a Brexit agreement with the EU. Personally, I have mixed feelings about that. Not only is our current membership the best deal on offer, so any Brexit deal is by definition poorer, but he's not asking for anything more realistic than Johnson. It just sounds more reasonable because he hasn't provided the details yet, in much the same way as the Brexiteers' proposals in 2016 sounded reasonable because they weren't clear on the details either. So I think that Labour trying to negotiate a different Brexit deal would be a fool's errand. Besides, Labour have no chance of forming a government on its own in a general election anytime soon. This year, Labour have suffered a net loss of councillors and MEPs, and the party's polling is even worse than when it was losing all those elected representatives. Frankly, were it not for the prospect of the Brexit party splitting Tory votes in a general election, I'd be extremely worried. But the gains on offer in a general election are still for the Liberal Democrats and Green Party, not for Labour, who not only hasn't made their Brexit policy clear, but hasn't even selected candidates in most constituencies. If Corbyn is seriously suggesting a general election in a matter of months, the party's not ready. It can't even begin campaigning. The Conservatives have already got a head start on us there, as have the Liberal Democrats. And in the absence of leadership at the top of the Labour Party, the message is becoming even more muddied. Stephen Kinnock, who represents about 30 Labour MPs, is preparing to indicate that his group would be prepared to vote in favour of the withdrawal agreement to stop no deal. Now, were May still Prime Minister, this would be a tantalising prospect for her. Though Boris Johnson is actively seeking no deal, I don't think he's interested in the withdrawal agreement anymore, so I wouldn't expect him to consider it. But the point is that Labour's message is increasingly muddied. The few candidates who have been selected for the next general election and who are in a position to get themselves about and start campaigning don't know how to answer the most obvious question on the doorstep. What would a Labour government do about Brexit? The official policy is to push for a public vote with Remain as an option. Fine, great. But it's a policy only to campaign for Remain this Parliament, not a word about what they intend after a general election. And that's what matters in a general election campaign. Then you have some Labour MPs saying that they'd support the withdrawal agreement, some saying that they want no deal, most saying that they don't want Brexit at all. And what is the leadership saying about it all? Nothing. Nothing at all. But what of Corbyn's proposal? Was it really all about this? Well, my view on it is, of course, an opinion. It's that Corbyn is using it as a way to get a no-deal Brexit but avoid the blame, in the same way that Johnson is refusing to engage with the EU for a deal but blaming the EU for not getting a deal. So Corbyn is intending to blame others for not supporting his bid as Prime Minister. After all, if they support him as Prime Minister, he would get that extension and guarantee that there'd be a no-deal Brexit stopped. That'll convince his supporters. However, you can turn it on its head as well. If he supported a compromise candidate, no deal is still averted and he still gets his general election as well, after another referendum of course. After all, this plan only works with Conservative MPs supporting it. If they're willing to bypass their leader, then Corbyn has to meet them halfway. But he doesn't intend to because he's happy with Boris Johnson. In fact, Johnson and Corbyn are both happy as Larry with each other. In Corbyn, Johnson has a socialist bogeyman with which to scare Conservative voters and MPs. In Johnson, Corbyn has an entitled Etonian with which to rally the far left. The problem is that both men are only appealing to the extremes of their political wing, which is unlikely to bode well in an election. They're both on the same team. They each want a no-deal Brexit, but for completely different reasons, and each one thinks it will be to their political advantage to get it, just so long as they don't take the blame. But they can't both be right in that calculation, and it is possible that they're both wrong. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.